So, welcome to another episode of Slightly Mental Podcast. Today, I have with me a massive legend, my good friend, and amazing coach, Natalie Lockyer. Hello, Nat. How are you today?
Today I'm actually really good. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. There's been
it's a good. That's a good start to the conversation. Woo! Everybody is okay. I was thinking about questions and what I want to talk about with you, and I couldn't help to start reminiscing about how we have met in our first coffee together in Costa Coffee. Do you remember?
yeah, I do. You were quite funny actually, because I don't think
Was I? Thank you.
yeah. Well, you're always funny,
I
but I
really,
don't think you quite knew what to make of me straight away, did you?
yeah. And I was thinking to choose, I was thinking, how would I choose the right word to describe what I thought about you? And I think inconspicuous would be a good word. I hope it's not offensive, but
Inconspicuous and like so I stood out in what way? I mean, I think I was in a bright pink dress, so I might have done it.
no, but when we met, we sort of, the tallest person, let's put it that way. And yeah, so we've met, and you kind of have this sort of innocent aura about you. But then we started talking about you having actually black belt in jiu-jitsu and have been running 4 gyms. I'm like, fuck me, she's got some balls. And then you said yes, but I carry them on my chest, which was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I think that's the thing that kind of won me over. Sorry, just one moment. I've got a light that's flickering, and I'm not sure
Yeah,
why.
no worries, go for it. Give him a smack.
Yeah, you might just unplug it. There you go. Sorry about that. I have to edit it
It's all
out.
right.
Life happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember you saying, "Oh, you've got some balls," and in most polite company, I can't normally say my response, but I guess I learned that quite young on the mat. Is
Yeah.
tatami in the dojo where I was training is yeah, sure. But like genuinely, I saw this quote once and I loved it, and it was, um, God made my balls so big they couldn't fit between my legs; they had to go on my chest. And I think it's so true. Like I love it when people kind of come up and go, "Oh, again," and you wouldn't really understand. This is like a conversation about being tough or about
Yeah.
fighting, and I'm like, yeah, cool, okay, let's fight then. What are the rules? Because they're not expecting it, and I think then it opens people up to seeing things in a different light because you've instantly challenged their assumptions. And I quite like opening that door for them where they're now open to possibilities. So,
No, definitely. Straight after that, I knew that you are my kind of people. So, and from that point onward, I think we had quite a good sort of relationship. We've done some work together, which is not a secret. We've done some workshops together. I know that you even tried to dress me up as a fairy during the one of the workshops. I can't actually remember if you managed to make me wear those wings or not. But
I don't think I made you, Sam. I think you put them on
ah,
because
damn
they
it.
were wings, they were sparkly, and you were feeling silly.
Now the secret is out. But when you arrive to the venue and open the boot of your car, I'm like, what the fuck are we doing a car boot sale? Because you had so many toys and books and everything. I'm like, wow, she's serious. She means fucking
I'm
business.
serious about play. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
So this was the mental health workshop we did. I
Yeah,
think it was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
last year because it was on
Mm,
Chinese New Year last year, wasn't it?
mm,
And we called it "Shut Up and Talk" because we wanted
yeah,
people having honest conversations about mental health. And yeah, I really think if we take ourselves too seriously, it's very important to be serious. But I think if we take ourselves too seriously, I mean, even in martial arts, it really taught me the most serious stuff. Like when you pull a knife out and stuff. We start off with rubber knives, and you play, you make it a game because otherwise you're going to absolutely freak out because
yeah,
it's scary stuff. So I think when we talk about mental health, for me, the same philosophy is you've got to make it fun to start with, to make everybody comfortable, to then be able to go into the serious stuff. Because otherwise, it's just this really big black looming thing, and everybody's getting uncomfortable. Everybody's trying to talk about stuff they're not sure how to talk about it, and laughter is, I think, a great way of releasing that, as well as crying. If you want to do some crying, do some crying. But I like laughter quite a lot. I think accessing that inner child allows you to escape for a little bit as well. So.
Yeah, this could be very visible whenever we were preparing any workshops together. It was just a fucking giggle fest and we didn't do much work. And then lastminute.com. Um, no, but I agree with you. And when we started that workshop, it starts off with everybody sharing their deep experience with mental health and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. But then during the break, everybody runs around and blows bubbles, and you think, whoa, what just happened here?
Yeah.
It's a really good approach. So how are you doing? How are you dealing with the current situation with COVID?
Yeah. Well, so I said I'm having a good day today. I am, but actually, I had to take half day sick yesterday. Um, More mental sickness, but it's manifesting physically because I'm
Yeah.
exhausted. And I don't know about anyone else, but I'm looking around at my colleagues and I'm in a very conscientious workplace. I've got people, I'm part of a well-being committee. We've got people who really care about their staff, and I'm just still seeing really tired people. I'm seeing tired people like when I'm calling them for clients, I'm seeing tired people when I'm calling them for friends, and I'm seeing a tired person in the mirror. And it's been tough because like normally I'm out dancing and I go
Mm.
to the gym in the mornings. I'm a very social person and I like my own company as well. I need time alone, but I love being around people, and I am finding it really, really hard, really, really, really tough. And it's meaning also I'm letting my boundaries with my work, my day job slip. So I've had quite a few weeks where, well, a lot of weeks where I've done overtime.
Hmm.
And I've actually been talking to a coach that the company provided. Again, the company really care. Um, And she's like, "What's one of the reasons you're doing this?" And you have to like, we're trained, right? As coaches, we're trained to be quite honest with ourselves and go, well, honestly, like, although it's horrible doing these long hours and I don't want to be doing it, it's better than the other one, which is I now can't do anything. I finished work. What's next? Like, I can clean the house. I cleaned my spice cupboard out the other day. I'm still quite excited when I open it. It's all organized and I can see everything. And I cleaned the baking cupboard out. But there's only so much of that you can do.
Yeah.
And I love everybody's like, oh, live your best life, la la la, learn stuff. This is a perfect opportunity. It was like, honestly to God, it's all right to feel. I'm gonna swear because you do. It's your podcast. You can edit it out.
Yeah, fucking go for it.
It's all right to feel shit. It's all right to say I'm tired for no reason. It's all right to say, actually, I really hate this. And not be living your best life and not learning 101 things and not doing all these online courses because you're just so fed up of seeing the screen. Um, And one of the things that's really helped, which is going to sound silly, is like I've gone and bought a couple of like really rubbish board games, like really cheap, tacky ones, and being able to play them with my partner. And it's just meant there's been spontaneity coming in. And I think that for me is so vital because otherwise it's just the two of you in a house or we're bubbling. So sometimes we're alone. And there's nothing new coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm getting excited when the bin man comes and takes my bins. Or the postman arrives and you're running up to the door and you're grabbing the post before it's even finished and you're like, oh my gosh, I've just turned into a Labrador puppy. Like on the post because it's something new. It's
Yeah.
something different.
I'm definitely with you. Every time I get a parcel, I'm like, it's Christmas again. And
Yeah,
it's
right.
Amazon man. Hello.
And I know my people now. I know my Hermes person, and I know my Amazon person, and I know my Royal Mail person. And like, should I actually have gone to the shop to get some food and I'm out? He actually knows where to put the parcel as well because we've had
Yeah.
enough chats. I'm just like, his round must take so long now because everybody wants to talk.
Nice. I'm guessing that very soon Domino's will invite me to become part of the family because I see their delivery guys so often. And yeah, it's my weak spot now because it's so easy to order pizza. And as you say, there's not many different things coming into life, so you try to break the mold a little bit. And but being stuck in one space, it's really challenging. Especially we have been locked up the majority of the last year, so
Yeah.
it's really challenging. I want to talk a little bit about your story with mental health. What sort of conditions did you suffer with, and how it all started? If you could talk about this, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I'm going to start with I've never been formally diagnosed with
Hmm.
anything. So I think that's important to say because when we're sharing our own stories, it's so easy to compare to other people. Or
Yeah.
when we're listening to stories, it's so easy to compare. And I think it's really important to know that, like, it's good to share our stories so we can hear similarities, but it's also good to understand there's always going to be differences. So I also think if you've had a formal diagnosis, there's definitely different ways of treating that. That said, I have done like the HADS score for depression and could quite easily have been diagnosed with moderate to severe depression at several points in my life of just um, not because I've not wanted to go down a medication route and because I've known enough how to go to other places to get support. But I do think it's really important that, you know, if you don't know that or you're not sure where to start, it's good to go talk to a doctor. Um, but yeah, so I would say, generally speaking, like if you ask me most of the time in most of my life, I'd have said I was like a happy person. You know, I love people, I love doing things, I love adventure, and I think life is to be lived and enjoyed. And I think it's a wonderful thing to have. And I've never really had suicidal ideation or anything like that.
Okay.
But there have definitely been points when I've been very low and I noticed these coming out of like teenage years and then growing up, but it really, really came to a forefront after quite a challenging 12 to 18 months. Um, it started off with my nan going into hospital, all of a sudden having a massive stroke. We didn't think she'd make it. She did, bless her. She lasted another 6 years. Sadly, she passed away earlier last year. Um, and then I was trying to buy a house at the time as well. I bought my house, and 3 days before I exchanged, my mum's partner passed away, and he'd been like a dad to me for since I was 12, and so for about a good 12, 13 years. And it was unexpected. And then 9 months after that, my dad passed away from cancer, and he'd had that for 8 years. And I think you're gonna know more. I found it really hard. I expected to know with dad. I expected to know, get people here, get people around the bedside. And I think his girlfriend knew because she said to me, I think I've just said goodbye to him. But the hospital never said call people. The
Hmm.
hospital said you might want to get people here. So I didn't. I let people know he was in hospital. And it sounds weird because you're like, oh, that's really ill and he's in hospital. But because with what he had, he was in hospital a lot. He'd had lots of visits, he'd had lots of times. And sadly, he passed away quite quickly after going into hospital. And that was really tough. And that was when I was doing my black belt grading as well.
Hmm.
And I was doing it because he wanted to see me in the black belt. And so I remember once I was trying to do a pre-grading, which is like an exam before an exam with martial arts, and just crying. Like I just couldn't. Martial arts takes you so close to the core of your being, which is one of the things I love about it. But when there's something that big there, there's just so much grief there. Like I couldn't. And I remember all the guys trying to be supportive, and are like, surely getting angry and hitting stuff will help. I was like, no, I'm not angry. I'm just really sad.
Yeah.
You know, like I'd accepted that he, unfortunately, with his condition, you know, he was going to pass away. It was just so sad when it happened. And they just didn't know how to support me. They, you know, I went outside of this school in this like white pajama suit and a brown belt on, and everybody's like beating each other up with chairs and swords and knives, and I'm like just sat on this bench crying. And everybody's more uncomfortable with that than like patching somebody up who's just accidentally
Yeah.
walked into something. Um, and yeah, after that, I had a bit of a challenging relationship as well with somebody who had their own pain to deal with and didn't know how to communicate it. And my coping strategies for that weren't great. And it led to, I wouldn't say abusive, but very neglectful relationship, one that was like maybe emotionally abusive to us both.
Mhm.
And then I ended up about a year after that in a culture and a workplace that was just not good. There was a boss who didn't know how to say no. They meant well. They were a very lovely human being. They weren't a bad human being. But they literally admitted to wanting to please everyone. And of course, you can't do that. You can't do that in a workplace. You have to say no at some point, or your staff are overworked and your deadlines aren't met and all these things. And I went from working in one of the best teams I've ever worked in to working in one of the most broken teams I've ever worked in. And it wasn't just the boss, it was lots of things, but we lost a lot of people. And it got to a point one summer in like 2018, just something else had not gone right in work. And I, at the age of, I think I was like, what was I think 32, professional, doing very well in my career. And I got to the point where I laid down under a desk and cried in an open plan office because I couldn't make it to the bathroom. And, I'd like to say that that was the first time I felt that way, but there were other times I'd made it to the bathroom, quite a few in that year. So it was quite bad, and it was just overwhelming. And it was this utter lack of feeling like I could advocate for myself, of feeling like I could say no, of feeling like I could say, this is what's on my plate and this is what I can deal with and this is what I need somebody else to deal with, because there was just no one in my corner. Well, that's what it felt like. And I remember there were two people who approached me whilst I'm lying under this desk, and you're in an open plan office full of very professional people in suits and ties, and they're all medical based people as well. And they're like, oh, feelings things, what are they? And one person comes up to me and is like, are you okay? And I'm like literally lying under this desk, crying my eyes out, having like, I don't know, as close as I would call it a mental breakdown. Everybody has their own version, but I'm literally envisaging like quitting by throwing food at people and all this kind of thing. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm okay. I'm lying under a desk crying. Like, what part of that tells you I'm okay? And I'm laughing now because what else can you do? This person clearly wanted to approach me, but did not know how, and used probably the worst words. And then there was another very intuitive human being who'd been very supportive before then, who laid down on the desk with me, looked me in the eye, no judgment, no like, what the f are you doing? By the way, you know your own work. And just looked me in the eye, laid under this desk with me on the floor, not even blinked about doing it, said, what do you need? And that was absolutely the right thing for me in that moment. And I said to her, I need autonomy, or I need someone with authority to tell me what to do. I either need to be able to choose for myself, or I need somebody else to advocate for me. But I felt like I had neither. And actually, in reality, of course, I had way more autonomy than I thought. But it felt very much like I was between a rock and a hard place, and there was nowhere to go. And yeah, that kind of spurred a lot of change going on in me. But it was a really tough time. And you'd have thought like that might have happened when my mum's partner passed away. That might have happened when my dad passed away. It might have happened when I left the abusive relationship. But actually it happened after all of that. And I think those definitely had an effect, definitely led to that point. But because in the workplace, no one was advocating for me, because in the workplace I was overwhelmed and I couldn't say no. And when I did say no, occasionally stuff would be done, or when I said I need help with this, stuff would be done. But I was stuck with some really big projects that weren't going well. I'd kind of said, I don't think it's going to go well. I don't think it should be done in this way. Nobody listened. And I just felt unheard, unseen, and unable to make choices for myself. And it affected every aspect of my life. Like, I literally had a housewarming party that summer, because I have one every year to sort of distract from the anniversary of my mum's partner's death, and celebrate new things as well, because I think it's important. And I'm there with all my friends and family. I'm feeling very loved. I'm feeling very supported, and I'm just crying my eyes out. And there wasn't a trigger that day. It's just there were so many deep emotions going on. And I remember my brother and I aren't always close,
Hmm.
but I remember him giving me a hug, which still gets me. I'm going to be like, oh, bawling my eyes out in a minute, because he doesn't normally do that. And just said, you've got to leave your job. You can't be there. And he then left because he's quite uncomfortable with that stuff and he needed to get home. But he afterwards sent me a really long text message that I still remember. And it gets me still, as you can hear. But it was basically the long lines of, no job is worth that. You need to leave. I will support you, which is like, my brother's never offered to support me in that way, like financially. We're all with you. Whatever you've got to do, you've got to leave that job. And it wasn't the first time somebody had said it to me. I'd had my mum, I'd had friends, I'd had really close friends saying it. But I think it was somebody who wouldn't normally reach out and saying that made me realise something's got to change. And you can hear how strong that emotion was, because it just gets me every time. And I think it was such a significant thing for him to send such a deep message. And there were other bits that I'm not going to talk about in there because I don't have his permission to share. But he shared some deep stuff as well. And I think that it just made me realise how bad it was if he was willing to share that much for me and to reach out in that way. And yeah, I was like, well, of all the things I've gone through, and other people have gone through bigger things, some people have gone through smaller things, but of all the things I found challenging, of all the loss I've had recently, it's a job that's breaking me. And that's not okay. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff after that that led me to where I am, and to being a lot more resilient. But it doesn't mean I don't have low days now, and it doesn't mean I don't have challenging days now. And I think they're part of course, but I find them easier to bounce back from most of the time now.
Wow, there's some really deep stuff coming out. Thank you very much for sharing.
You say you were going to go
Um,
deep.
yeah, I'm just sitting here trying to hold it in as well. Um, but your brother was right 100%. It's a very wise message. No job is worth that. Your mental breakdown and your mental health and your even physical health. So we can say that that's sort of being close to that breakdown, nervous breakdown, and that moment where you were sitting under the desk. That was in a way a turnaround point for you, wasn't it?
It's a very clear point, yeah. If you were to look at one of the worst moments, there were a couple of others as well, but yeah, that was for me what I would define as breaking point. Definitely. There are a few other breaking points after that, but that's like the one for me that's like started turning things.
I think the sad part of that story is that I think it's a case in many organizations still that mental health is just a fad, and it doesn't matter. And, uh, keep your personal problems at home, which is the biggest bullshit you can hear. Because sorry, my phone. Need to call my mom. But all the bullshit that keep your problems at home. It's you're the same person. So what would you say would have to be in place in that moment where you have been, where what kind of support should have been there for you to be able to get through that moment?
Yeah, so the funny thing is, I wouldn't say there was any one person in that organization that was being horrible or being unhuman or didn't care in their own way. I think everybody did. And I think that's almost harder when you're like, well, this person's checked in with me. And there were mental health first aiders. I was aware there were people there. But I think this is the other thing, is like, I was like, oh, but I'm not depressed. I'm not suicidal. I'm okay. Like, I have nothing, I haven't had anything recently that I should go to this person for, which obviously was not the truth. But I think it's a little bit like, you get a paper cut on your finger, you don't go to your first aider in work, right? Do you?
Yeah.
First aider. But if somebody's just passed out down the stairs, well, where I worked, we worked with medics, so I'd run and get a medic rather than a first aider. But you know, you run and get someone, but somebody else is running and getting that person for you, and then they can approach and say, "Hey, I'm a first aider, can I help?" So unless you have that moment, and even there, nobody went and got me a mental health first aider. That I think I even continued working. I just went to the bathroom. We all ignored it. I came back. I can't remember, to be honest with you. So the people cared. They just didn't know how to deal with it. So I think rather than going, oh, I've got mental health first aiders, tick box done, I think everyone should have basic training.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just because, you know, you facilitate training. I genuinely think everyone should have training. I've learned so much over the past few years of how to approach other people, and the language to use. And, you know, I did training with you before Christmas and I learned stuff there still. And I think it's a continual process. Again, I don't think it's, well, I've done the training, tick, that's done. I don't need to do it for another few years. I think it's conversations you need to be having all the time. And the problem is people don't see the business need. And the other thing is, if somebody approaches you and says, I'm not coping, I need XYZ, you need to listen to that because that takes a lot of courage. And I had been articulate in that. The problem was there were so many things going wrong in that department at the time. It felt like, oh, well, it's someone complaining, or, oh, they're not coping with their job. And there were people looking back who had tried to help me and I hadn't realized it. I think you need to have brave organizations, and Brené Brown talks about this a lot. You need to be brave enough to have an honest conversation with people. I think everybody needs the basic skills of knowing how to talk about mental health, of spotting people who are not doing okay. One of mine was I became a lot more social, which people think, oh, it's about withdrawal. It's not always. I became very social. I was talking to everybody in that building because I didn't want to be at my desk. I didn't want to be trapped. You know?
Yeah.
So I think, training for everyone. I think hosting supportive stuff. There was an employee assistance program, so there was 6 months of counselling. They basically told me to leave the job or to go off sick long term. I felt like going off sick was quitting and not being loyal. And possibly belying people who really, in my mind, really were sick and really needed the sick leave. I didn't believe this was the right thing to do. Looking back, I totally should have done it. But these are the stories we tell ourselves, right? You know, hey, I am a black belt. I know how to fight people. I'm strong. I'm brave. I'm all right.
I'm tough. I'm strong enough. I can get through it on my own. I don't need any help.
Yeah. Or, like, you know, I'm not that bad. It needs to go to people who really need it. All of that. So it's a subtle thing, but I think you need to weave it into your day-to-day training. You need to weave it into the personal development plans. You need to weave it into the culture of the business where humans come first. And I think in an odd way, lockdown has facilitated some of that and has taken or challenged some of that as well.
Yeah.
Because we've taken off this mask, we've seen inside people's homes, we've seen, you know, we've run big board meetings in Doctor Who t-shirts with cats walking through and children asking us what more than and less than is, and just like joining in and helping because we understand what that is. Whereas, can you imagine if you'd sat in a boardroom before and somebody, you know, the CEO walks in this like geeky science t-shirt, somebody else is like, oh sorry, that's my cat, another person suddenly disappears and reappears with like eating their cereal or whatever it is, you'd be like, oh, that's not how you conduct business.
Talks without any volume.
Yeah,
you're on mute.
They get in and they can't get in.
Yeah.
So I think it's brought in humanity, but it's also challenged connection, which I think is really important as well, is that human connection, is that knowing the nuances about a person. It doesn't mean all of their life, you know, it doesn't have to be invasive.
It's being genuinely interested in somebody that works with you.
Yeah, like, do they have a dog? Do they have kids? What do they do for fun? Was there something they were really looking forward to on the weekend? You know, how did it go? That kind of thing. So I think it's all those things. I also do think I mean, legally, my company more than gave me enough time off around the bereavements, but I think people don't understand that when you lose someone in your life, that grief isn't time bound.
Yeah.
And I still get moments where I still work in the healthcare side of pharma, and there might be a patient story that just gets me
Hmm.
about a cancer patient, and the grief comes right back fresh and new. And that doesn't mean you have to be like tiptoeing around me. It doesn't have to mean you have to be like apologizing when you're talking about your dads on Father's Day or anything like that. But it does mean if I suddenly burst into tears, you're like, oh, what's going on? Check in with me, see what I need. And then maybe I just need 5 minutes to compose myself again and just experience that grief for a bit and then come back.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's lots of subtle, small things that businesses need to do. And I also think when somebody's not coping, you need to know how to respond to that. You need to have people who are strong enough to have those conversations rather than brush it under the carpet.
Definitely.
Um,
And I agree with you 100%. Even though I train first aiders for mental health, I think that this is a good starting point because now, as a business, you prepared for the crisis, but that's not the only thing. Now, let's think about the daily stuff. How can we make sure that this is a daily conversation, that we teach people how to take care of each other and themselves as well, because very often people are not even aware of their own needs, of looking after their own mental health. And I didn't have a clue about that stuff until I smashed my face on that proverbial rock bottom. My story is, anxiety for 8 years, and substance abuse and all that stuff. If somebody talked to me about mental health, 10 years ago, I'd be like, get out of here, let's have a beer.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly right. You when you're in it, I think you have to have almost reached that lower point and been forced to acknowledge it before you're ready to really talk about it. And that doesn't mean you're out of it either. That just means you're ready to talk about it.
I believe that it stays with you for life. It's like now, for example, first lockdown came in. I was like, I just have 2 weeks off. I just watch telly and give myself a nice, easy time, and then I gonna go back to whatever I do. And I was working from home, obviously. But after 2 weeks, I was like, this is going to stay for longer, and the anxiety started coming back. And it's a good sign that it's not just you're doing one thing once and you're cured. You have to have a self-care sort of plan and doing things daily on regular basis to make sure that your needs are met. And I would say it's a blessing in disguise because you know that if, for example, I know if I don't work out regularly, for example, I have too much energy inside me and it triggers anxiety. So this is my motivation to go cycling or go to the gym if they are open. So in a way, I would say it is a blessing in disguise because I look after myself much better than I used to back in the days. Um, so yeah, but people are not aware of their needs even. So I think having first aid for mental health team, that's a good move. But then what can we do to prevent the crisis? Can we do to teach people about their own mental health, how to support yourself and people around you, and recognize that somebody might need your support? Because then you can spot something in time, and before it becomes a deep depression, somebody might just be going through some challenging times and just need an open conversation. Very often that's enough. um so yeah, I'm totally with you.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't have to be. I think businesses often think, oh, it's a big thing, it's an expensive thing. Like it's the small things, and this is why it's hard to pick up. Right? I do think for me, literally at some points, I needed somebody to go. You know what? Either this deadline can be extended, or you don't have to be in this meeting because I was trying to do work whilst in a meeting to do both, and actually I was doing neither because you can't fully focus on a meeting or fully focus on a project if you're doing both, right? And it's those things. It's the things like Simon Sinek says as well. If you ask someone how they are, you better be ready for the answer.
Yeah.
It's whilst I'm holding a phone going between meetings. It's, hey, how are you? Looking them in the eye. There's no technology on, and you're ready to listen to the answer. And it might be like, oh, I'm fine. And go, okay, cool. How are you really? And they're like, no, genuinely, I'm fine. I've had a great weekend, la la la. You get to know something that's great about them. Or they're like, actually, I'm kind of struggling a bit. Or they might be like, oh, I'm okay. Just there's this project and it's a bit overwhelming. You're like, oh, cool. Do you want to talk about, like, you know what? I've got a quarter of an hour now. Do you want to sit down and go over some stuff we can do to help you with that? And then being willing to go, okay, this is what I can do. This is what I think so and so can do. Are you okay if I go approach them? Right? Because nobody had asked me what I needed. They just told me what I needed to do.
Yeah.
You need to do this. You need to take time off sick. You need to leave your job. You need to blah, 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 blah. No, nobody apart from that person who laid under the desk, she said, what do you need? And then she went and got it. And she actually spoke to like the department head, who was sort of on a par, but not, because of our reporting structures with my boss. And that person actually took me under their wing a bit and then did things like, well, what do you need today? And she didn't, this sounds silly, but we went through my schedule. She's like, right, that meeting you're not going to, I will tell them. If anybody asks you, if anybody gives you a hard time, tell them to talk to me. I have given you permission not to be in this meeting. And I needed that. That doesn't cost money. It does cost a bit of time and intention. And it wasn't her role because she wasn't my boss, but it helped. And I think it's those small things, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think what you said, that people very often get too much work. And because we still have this old sort of structure that your manager or whatever is your boss and they have the deciding voice, whatever they say you have to do, people are not always open to saying, you know, you have given me too much work, because they are either afraid of how maybe they will be portrayed as a weak link in the team, or I'm not performing too well, or maybe they're afraid of their position. But actually that's necessary to communicate, listen, you have given me a little bit too much, and I'll work only 8 hours a day or 10 hours, whatever it is. And it happens a lot. And I used to struggle with that myself when I was younger. I would always, because I had this people pleasing mechanism in me, I always would do whatever I needed, and I never looked after myself. But now I have no problem to say, listen, you have given me this already, and now you want me to do this as well. It's one or the other, your choice.
I love doing that you're boundarying, because I'm like, hands up, like one of the reasons I
Yeah.
had to take off of the day is like, I haven't been doing that recently and I needed the reminder. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a coach and I've gone through all these things, and yet I still need reminding. And you know what, we're human, and like you said, we go back into those behavior traps, don't we? So we need to
Yeah.
find ways of like coming out of it quicker, recognizing it quicker.
Having boundaries, genuine boundaries, and stop people pleasing in your life, I think that's a solution for a lot of problems in our life. And I was guilty of that for, years and years. I got this mechanism from my mom. I love her to bits, but because she had quite challenging life, I know that, she was always trying to make everybody around happy, all this stuff. So she didn't have many boundaries. And obviously I got that from her. But when I grow up, that's my responsibility to actually look after myself and reparent myself. So I realized, boundaries are really important. When somebody walks over you, you don't say, oh, hello. You just politely tell them to fuck off and leave you alone, right? So I've learned this. And you have to, it's true. And then you have to prioritize the relationship with yourself over the relationship with the other person. Even if that leads to breaking the relationship, you still need to look after yourself. And that's something that I've noticed recently, because there's a lot of changes in my life, and I can see my friends challenging my choices and saying, well, you don't spend enough time with me and doing this and that. I'm like, okay, but you don't realize that you are at home watching telly for 24/7, and I'm here working 2 jobs and studying at night. So if I don't call you for 2 weeks, yeah, cool, let's have a chat, but don't make me feel like, don't push a blame on me. So I haven't got a problem now to say that, but only because I know that this is a key ingredient. And very often it's uncomfortable to say that, you're crossing a boundary. You called me a name that I'm not comfortable with, or you giving me too much work, or you did this and I don't appreciate it. But it's challenging and uncomfortable in this moment. But on the other side of that is freedom, because you and the self-respect, you look after the relationship with yourself, which is the most important. So I haven't got a problem to, and sometimes the other person obviously will think you're a bit of a dick and you're arrogant and all that. It doesn't matter, because I wish for everybody genuinely that everybody looks after the relationship with themselves the most. And even if one of my friends or somebody I know really well come to me one day and say, listen, our relationship is not serving me anymore, cool, I'm out of there, right? Because that's sort of in line with my values. So I understand that. It's more when somebody's trying to push the blame on me. Oh, you didn't call me in 2 weeks. I'm fucking sorry. Okay, I'm trying to, create something better in my life. If you're not on board, sorry. I
Yeah,
sound
I
like a
mean,
prick, but that's exactly how I think.
well, I mean, occasionally, no. But I think this is a thing. I'd like to offer a bit of a challenge though into some of the mindset as well, if that's all right, because I think it's. Is that okay? I'm just
Go on. Yeah,
okay.
go for it. I'm up for a challenge.
Um, I had that too, and I thought I wasn't like this massive people pleaser, but I am. And I love service. So like I love giving, I love helping
Hmm.
others. Like, and I love helping others, particularly when they don't know about it, which is like a bit weird, but I think that the best way to help others, the reason you have to boundary is one, yes, you need that relationship for you, and you're a happier, healthier, more productive person, a better teammate if you've boundaried and you're happy. So you're serving by boundarying,
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
happy by boundarying. Two, they get to learn from you, so they will start doing the same. And I think it's great that you can tell people to fuck off and all of that, but I also think there's gentler ways of doing it if
Oh, I don't genuinely go to people and tell them to fuck off. It's
Mhm.
there's yeah, absolutely. You try to do it in more diplomatic way. You ask them to take a hike or something. But if somebody is genuinely,
It's even simpler than that, of simply like you were saying it earlier, like, "This is my plate, this is what's full, this is what needs to come
yeah,
off." And, saying to people, I learned this, and I use it as an analogy quite a lot. One of my jobs when I was in university was waitressing. I really enjoyed it. Person who serves, yeah.
there you go.
Enjoy it. There was a new boss who came in to a family, like, pub that had its regulars. Oh, are you still there? My computer's doing something.
Yeah, I'm here all the
Oh,
time.
sorry. Okay. Um, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Um, so I'm in this pub, family run, new person's come in, and they double booked the restaurant. And I flipped out because he put so many tables in, I could barely get around. And I couldn't serve properly. I couldn't collect people's plates when they were done. I couldn't ask them what they wanted next. I think it's a really great analogy. It's like that restaurant was so full, I couldn't do a good job. And people went away unhappy. People went away not coming back. People went away going, what's happened? This place has gone downhill since new ownership. And if he had simply said, very sorry, we're fully booked for that evening. We've got XYZ slots
Hmm.
available, or we can reserve for you the same time next week, then that almost creates this demand of going, oh my gosh, they're so busy, I've got to book ahead. And then they tell them, oh yeah, but if you want to go there, you've got to book ahead. And I think here's the thing with us humans as well. If I say to you, you know what, Sam, like I've got some stuff on right now. I really want to get involved in this project. If you need to do it now, I can't. If you need my help and you can wait, then I can do it at this time. Everybody's happy because they've not got you doing a rubbish job. They've not got you
Yeah.
unable to manage your workload. They've not got you doing something that's just below par for who and where you are. So I think you have to tell people no for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And it's only when penny drops at some point in your life and you think, actually, this is beneficial. When you try to make everybody happy and you try to make everybody like you, it's usually the opposite. People don't respect you. People walk over you, treat you as a pushover. That was the story of my life until I was 30, maybe, because I always want everybody to be one happy family. But only at the crisis moment when I was like, okay, my last chance. I either gonna change my life or I'm gonna end up in a cemetery. And from that point, when I started actually respecting myself more, the relationships I have with people now are completely different. And there's mutual respect. There are boundaries, It completely changes. I absolutely agree with you. You have to, the old analogy that you have to fill in your cup first, because then you have something to give. If your cup is empty, you're running on fumes. You can't actually help other people, especially like when you say you choose a life of service. And I see myself similar. I want to teach people around about mental health and help whoever I can. So that's why I'm not really guilty, because I know to do this I have to have boundaries and cut out a bit of bullshit here and there, and people who are not serving me, who have, toxic energy, who are trying to make me do something else. So boundaries are a massive thing.
Yeah, hugely. And so what do you think is the turning point? Because we've talked about that quite a lot, and I'm going to turn this back on you, but what do you think is the turning point for most people to realize this is a boundary for me? Because not everybody's always aware of where their boundary is.
Well, for most people, unfortunately, is when you're on the rock bottom, when you fuck up your life so much that it's like do or die. Like I ended up in a hospital, with like massive sort of. I started drinking so much I couldn't stop. But I think the good indicator is when somebody wants you to do something and it makes you feel uncomfortable. We all have the gut feeling, we all have intuition, but we stopped using it because we try to sort of run around and make everybody happy. Listen to your own intuition, and if somebody wants to make you do something that makes you uncomfortable, that's usually an indication that you should pay attention to what they are saying, how they talk to you, what they want you to do. I
Mhm.
believe that's an indication. If you feel uncomfortable with something, if something, like with sales, if something looks too good to be true, it usually is. So if something feels wrong, it probably is. But
Mhm.
it's, again, that then we switch into this trying to make somebody happy with us. Take a step back and think about what is the right course of action now for me, not for somebody else.
Yeah.
I would say that.
Okay.
It's
I
just,
like.
I know it on the surface, and I battled with this for many years, and I know on the surface it sounds like he's a selfish bastard, but no, actually not, because I know that you have to prioritize yourself, your own well-being, because then you can serve more people, you have more to give, you have more time. It's like with discipline. If you don't have discipline in your life, people think that discipline means that you don't have freedom, and it's actually opposite. If you have discipline around your time, that means you do what you need to do when you need to do it, and the rest of your time is free. If you have discipline around money, you have money, you spend money where you have to, and then you have some left. But if you spend money on bullshit on Amazon first, and because you don't have financial discipline,
Coming through the door, right?
yeah, then you have, you wake up and like, fuck, I can't pay my bills. So it's the same. Boundaries are, in my opinion, like discipline.
Mm,
It might feel like it's the sort of uncomfortable thing in your life to do, but actually it's necessary.
yeah. I also think for someone, so I'm working on this with a few people in my life. I'm not going to say who they are because I haven't asked them if I can share.
Yeah, no worries.
But I have known people where I'm like, dear gosh, I just want to know what you like because I don't know you because you're always, I feel like they're always doing the thing that they think that I want to do. So they're doing what they perceive me to want. And just occasionally it would be great to know that they don't want to do something, or they like it's simple. Like
Yeah.
I remember a lady in work, I kept making her tea and it was, she didn't like it, but she never told me. And I was like, why? Oh, I didn't want to upset you. I was like, but I've just been making you bad tea for a
Oh
year.
my god, you just made my
What are
day.
you doing? And she's like, oh, you seem so happy when you can make me tea. It's like, yeah, because I thought I was genuinely bringing you tea that you wanted and making your day better, like life of surface here. Um, if you don't tell me, then how am I gonna know? And so I think from the other's perspective of knowing someone who doesn't know how to boundary or doesn't know how to say no or doesn't even know how to say this is what I like, this is what I enjoy, because I
Yeah.
think boundaries are about that as well. They're not just about saying no, they're about what I want to say yes to. Like, I really want to say yes to this thing, let's do it. Or even, hey, that's not the thing that I would automatically say yes to on my own, but because I love you, I'm doing that. So the other person understands why you're doing it. So you can consciously choose to do something that might be like,
Yeah.
maybe not what I would normally want to do, but I'm choosing to do it. And then again, I think that's fine. You've made it a conscious choice. So yeah, I would say simple things for me for boundarying. It doesn't have to be big, scary no. It could be a you know what, I really like my tea without sugar. Thank you. Like, love that you're making it for me, but no sugar.
I mean, that's
Boundary set, done.
yeah, but listening to that is something that I probably would do when I was in like my teens and early 20s. If somebody would make me tea with sugar and I didn't like sugar, I would just drink it and shut up because I know they try to do something nice for me and I don't want to upset them. But now I'll be like, no, I just don't. It's just you're not saying anything offensive. You're just saying, well, that's just the way it is. It's just reality. I appreciate you doing making me tea. It's an amazing gesture, but usually I have it without sugar. So for me, even that tiny little thing, that might be trivial for some people. I'll be like, no, it's just not the way it is.
Yeah.
I
And
guess
I
I
mean,
have
that's
changed
the
a bit.
example, right? And I guess it's my aim was to say our boundaries don't have to be big, gigantic,
Yeah.
uncomfortable no's. They can be little yeses. They can be little, you know what I like actually is this. Because how many times have we not told our partner something or not told a friend something, you know? I value the friend that goes, dude, don't wear that. It looks ugly. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
what is on your face right now? You
Yeah.
know, all of that kind of thing. Um, but I think we get scared when we say about boundaries, particularly people pleasers and servers get worried. Oh no, people are going to be upset with me. It's like, you know what? Those boundaries can start small or they can start big, but they got to start somewhere.
It's like Jimmy Carr, sorry. What's the actor from Ace Ventura? Jim Carrey.
Period.
Jim Carrey said that I will paraphrase, but basically that if you're looking for acceptance, it can make you invisible in the world because that's exactly how it is. The more acceptance you're looking for, the more sort of you are not yourself and you try to please people. When you don't care about anybody's opinion and you just yourself, you usually attract people that are your kind of people, and then whoever don't want to hang out with you, they will just sort of flake off, which is good. um, I want to talk a little bit about your sort of your your jiu-jitsu career.
Yeah.
What were the biggest lessons that martial arts have taught you?
How long have we got?
However you want.
um, jokingly, move your feet. If somebody is punching, throwing stuff, move your feet. Just get
Okay.
out of the way. Being punched in the face really hurts. I learned that one really well. Eyebrow blocking, not to be recommended. What were the biggest things? There's so many. And so like where I like coaching is with leaders, it's partly because of the story that I've told you about my leaders not being where I need them to be. It's partly because I was this very quiet, meek thing that people always underestimated as a kid. I never really felt like I belonged. I didn't understand why I had to like the same things as other people to be accepted. So like it was a bit weird in that like actually by not conforming, by being my authentic self, I was very lonely. um, and then I tried martial arts, and it was a place where I could earn who I was. I could turn up, train, and become however I wanted to be, and how whatever I showed up with was what I got back. And I was the only junior on a mat full of adults because I was quite a big junior. I was a bit too big for like the little juniors because I could just put my hand out and be like, "Yeah, come on."
Try that.
But that meant I was always the smallest person on the mat. I was always the weakest person on the mat, and quite often I was only female on the mat for a lot of my training time. Not always, like particularly as I got older, I went into university, there were more girls, and then later on, one of my senseis, my instructors, was a beautiful, wonderful, terrifying, amazing woman um, who was 4'11". We called her Yoda behind her back, never to her face.
Now the secret will be out.
Yeah. And so like stood next to her, I could never go, well, I'm too small, I'm too weak, I can't do this because like this 4'11" person has just lifted 18 stone guy over her head. Like that I can no longer go, well, I can't do it because I'm too
Yeah.
little. She like just would look at me and go, yeah, on you get. So biggest lessons I have learned. One, you have got to have honesty with yourself to grow to develop, to be brave, you have to first see and embrace the mess because it's there, and
Yeah.
ignoring it will not make it go away. Um, and honestly, the first thing you face on that mat is all of your fears that you're not big enough, that you're not strong enough, that you don't know how to do it. And facing that fear when you're eye to eye with someone who's about to punch you, who's about to hit you over the head with a stick, who's got a chair raised and trying to hit you on the head with it. Um, or particularly when we started then working into like 2-man, 3-man attack scenarios, you're in the middle, you're being overwhelmed. The biggest thing is what's on the inside. That is what's going to make all of the difference.
Hmm.
And if you haven't faced yourself, if you haven't acknowledged your demons and you don't know how to counteract them, you will lose. Like every fight is won or lost in the mind. Every single one. And that means out there in your life as well. And I have to come back to that lesson quite a lot in my life. You know, the work stuff. I was like, oh, I'm fine. I'm okay. I don't need help. I had to face it eventually. Go, actually, I do. And as soon as I admitted it, things can get better. So I think one is know yourself. Be honest with yourself. The messy, dark, twisty, ugly bits. We talk about it in coaching. We call it the shadow,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it. That is you, and actually, there's strength in that mess as well. There is strength in your weakness, but if you don't know them, you can never be everything that you're meant to be. So there's that. I think then play is just so vitally important in life.
Yeah, I've seen that when you open the car of your the boot of your car.
Right? And we
Mhm.
talked about it earlier, but you might be silly, you're like, oh, black belt training, like see like Karate Kid, and it's all very serious. But actually, you have to have this play. Play brings in humility as
Mhm.
well. It brings in freedom, it brings in letting go, and it brings in a place where mistakes are okay. Where
Allows you to explore a bit more, isn't it?
yeah, and you get to, like it brings in this space where losing is okay. And I think that's the next thing is that we learn more through losing than we do through winning. And my instructor would say this, he would say, I would fight these guys, right? The groundwork is like wrestling on the floor, where strength is everything. I can't be like quicker and faster, and I can't be like the person that slips through this little space here. There's literally like me, the floor, and a heavy person, right? There's not a lot going for me. But if I improved each week, then it would take them longer to beat me. And he would say, every time you lose, you learn a way not to do something. You
Mhm.
learn a way out. You learn a way to adapt. Every time you win, you only learn one way. And if you keep winning in the same way, you only have one way of winning. And
That's so good.
right, but
Yeah.
it's true. And I have to go back to like every time I failed, I have learned. Sometimes I have to repeat that lesson, and I'm a little bit ashamed that like sometimes you're like, okay, we're here again. Really, I need to learn this one again. Um, like in life, you're like, okay, that like like eating 3 bars of chocolate on the weekend results in weight gain if you don't exercise, right? There's like pizza and everything else. Just like, oh yeah, I remember that one, and I also remember the exercise is harder afterwards. um, but yeah, and I didn't know what growth mindset was until a couple of years ago. I'd never heard of Carol Dweck. I'd never heard of the theory. And I was in a course, positive psychology for coaching, when
Mhm.
someone's like, you know what growth mindset is? I'm like, I don't know. And then they described it. I'm like, oh, that's jitsu.
Shit.
Because the perverse thing is when something's done, yeah, you practice it until it's good, right? And you practice until you cannot fail. You don't practice until you're good at it. You practice it until it cannot fail, which is a lot more than people think. Um, and then you keep practicing that, but your focus goes on to the thing where you're weak, the thing where you need to improve. So you actively seek the thing that you are bad at so that you can improve it. And the joy is in improvement.
Mhm.
Whereas in school, we're trained to seek the thing we're good at, avoid the thing we fail. Like, if you said in school, oh, what are you going to do at A level? And they're like, whatever we're calling it. They're like, well, I'm going to do maths and psychology because I got E's in those, and I don't think I'll do the biology because I got an A in that, so I think I'm done. Like, people would think you're crazy, right? But actually, that's where the most learning is. Now, I'm not advocating necessarily going and doing like what you absolutely suck at. Knowing where your strengths and weaknesses lie and knowing your battles to win is also another one. But I think going, I suck at this, great, I can learn so much, is a really good mindset to be in. Really good mindset to be in. And that also then fosters this idea of going and finding others who are better at it than you. I absolutely hate being the best person in the room
It's
because it's,
boring, isn't it? If not,
yeah, right.
learn.
You're like, oh, and also there's so much pressure to be good.
Yeah.
I love being a learner because if I'm at the bottom of the pile, there's nowhere else to go but up, right? Everything is
Mm.
a learning day. And I've done this even in dancing, where like I switched from one dance style to another, and I intentionally went to one of the hardest dance styles to learn, where I knew it would be like a minefield and break my brain. And I was, people were like, why are you doing it? It's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so much fun. I've got so much to learn. I'm like, but you're not gonna be good straight away. And I'm like, yeah, I know, right? No, I don't. No, I don't get it, because you're not going to be good right away, and you're good in this other thing. And like, you can pretty much in some venues have you pick with partners, and I'm like, well, that's really nice. I really like that, but that comes with responsibility. I also love being a learner, and so yeah, I think there's so much in martial arts, so much of its mindset, right? But one, face yourself, be honest with yourself, and embrace all of who you are. The dark, ugly, squishy, uncomfortable bits are super, super important. You have to know them, because the first person you fight is you,
Yeah.
and that person knows all of your moves, knows all of your game plan, and can get there quicker than you. So you better be ready for it, in life as well as in an actual fight. Two, look for the learning and enjoy it. Enjoy it with play, enjoy it with growth. And three, I think like quite often we can assume something's going to be so painful, and the fear of getting it done. And this has come up time and time again when I've done things like fire walking, which I trained in last year, glass walking, other challenges that I've done, leaving my job for the first time, or breaking up with someone, or communicating that boundary that you're scared about communicating. The fear comes right before, the pain comes right before, and it's never quite as bad as you think it's going to be when you're in it, but you've got to make that first move.
Yeah.
And in a fight, if you stay at punching distance, so like if you've got two people, you can retreat a really long way away, and then they call in all the shots and you're just running and they're chasing. You can stay middle distance and you're getting pummeled because you're right in firing range. And what's counterintuitive is the best way to win a fight is to go in.
The only way out is in.
Yeah, you've got to go in, and it's the first thing novices struggle with is if you have been left with no other choice than to fight, and they're there and you can't get away easily, you have to go in. And what they'll do is they'll hang back, and they keep getting like, we'll tap them. We won't like punch them, right? Tap them so they know, hey, you're in punching range. You've got to go in and get close to that person to be able to win in this martial art that I've trained in Jiu-Jitsu. You've got to be close to the center of gravity. You've got to be close to the center of the problem to be able to figure it out and win. And I think so often we're staying away from the thing that is inevitable, but we're afraid of, the thing we're anxious about, the thing we're worried about. And that means we just keep getting pummeled by it. And sometimes you've got to face it head on, that thing that's worrying you, that thing that's bringing anxiety, that job, that conversation with your boss, with your partner, with whoever. You've got to have it sensitively, with respect, with honor and humility and all of that, but you've got to do it, because the waiting is the most painful thing.
Yeah.
Most painful.
I agree with you. What I found out through my own journey, and then working with people with anxiety and other people with different conditions, and learning about mental health, is that obviously you go through some kind of emotional pain, so what you're looking for is safety, but that's the worst place to be, because the more you stay in the safe place, the more your comfort zone shrinks and it starts to suffocate you. And I've realized that actually I have to step out of there for a little bit, face the fear until I'm comfortable. When you can't take it anymore, you sort of retract, and then
Mhm.
the emotional overload comes down. So you have to sort of step out of your comfort zone, and that builds your resilience, that builds stronger personality. And that was my way to recovery. That was one of the most important thing, because I started facing all the stuff that I put away, conversations, uncomfortable conversations with people, things that I wouldn't do because it was just uncomfortable. I don't have to do it because why, blah blah blah. So my one of my first steps was I was jumping on everything that I had put off for later, and everything that made me uncomfortable. Um, what you said about martial arts, what's really interesting about martial arts, I've tried Thai boxing for about a year, so not a massive learning, but you learn a lot, because when you start, you think, I'm gonna learn how to fight, I'm gonna beat everybody in the neighborhood.
Because so that I'm going to win.
Yeah, your ego comes out, but when you start learning, and especially if you have a good teacher, I had bloody great teacher in London, um, you learn a lot of respect and a lot of discipline. That's amazing. It's like the moment I would walk into
Yes,
the
right? That's the
exactly.
thing.
The moment I walk into the gym, it's like completely different environment. You could feel it in the air that he would not have it any other way. And if anybody stepped out of the line, they would be punished for that. Not in a aggressive kind of way, but just to tell them that this is not acceptable. And that's what I love about martial arts. It teaches you a lot of respect, discipline, and exactly being courageous and stepping into your fears.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also like I love like the mind body connection and stuff. And you must have found if you are on an off day mentally, your physical form is not going to be where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And then you're getting punched, right? Like you're
Yeah.
missing stuff, you're not noticing. And that showed up time and time again. And I would have students who were very, very skilled, very proficient, very knowledgeable. But if their spirit, their chi wasn't in it that day, they could fail a grading that they should have blown through because this and this, that your heart and your head are not in it.
Yeah.
Your body's the same body. It wasn't the opponents, it wasn't the day, it was you and where you're at. I think, yeah.
You also mentioned the shadow self. That's the idea. I have been in love, like deeply obsessed for a while now. Um, I think it's a sort of great way to look at life and people, and I think it deserves a bit more light. Let's put it that way, a bit more attention.
Kind of
Because
like the shadow.
yeah, yeah. Well, the reality is that every person has good and bad in them, or capability to do good and bad things. And I believe, strongly believe, with this idea that even Carl Jung and spirituality perpetuates, that you have to be connected with both and integrate both of them to be a really strong person, to be in control with yourself. And people who think that are inherently good, I think those are the most dangerous, because when triggers come, they can't control that evil side, that sort of, yeah. So they just react, and whoa, where did it come from? Well, you have never been there, you have never explored it, you don't know how to control it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we're so afraid of these other sides of ourselves, and then it's almost like this little dark, naughty secret, isn't
Mm,
it? That's part of us, and either we're very uncomfortable facing them ourselves, or we feel we can't show them to others. And I'm not advocating going out and being an absolute arse to anyone, including yourself, by the way. Like, you should not be being an arse to yourself in your language. Um, my argument though is that I don't think anyone, or at least I have yet to meet anyone who is inherently good or inherently evil.
yeah.
And I think when we have that dichotomy of this light and dark, I think it's an unfair thing because that part of you is born out of you to protect. It's born out to keep your autonomy. It's born out of you to enforce your boundaries when you're not doing them. And it's inherently selfish because that's how you survive. And you need to kind of harness it with other people's needs, with something bigger than yourself. But it's not bad. It's why you're still alive. It's why you're here. It's why I could do horrible things to look after me if I needed to.
Yeah.
But I harness it with, I don't let that out to play unless it needs to. Like, that doesn't just break into a room full of people who are being really decent to me. Of course not. That's not the right thing to do. But that doesn't mean that side of me that can do those things is bad. That side of me protects me. That side of me means I'm fairly confident, provided, like, you know, the fates and everything else are in the way, because being a black belt does not guarantee anything, is that I can walk into a situation and hopefully walk out of it.
Yeah.
And knowing that side's there, embracing that side, has actually got me out of some situations, because somebody has looked me in the eye, has threatened me, and I have let that side out. I have let that side shine, and it has gone, I don't want to, but if we have to, let's dance.
Yeah.
And just that confidence. Well, you know, not that I want a fight, right? Like, gosh, any fight that you go into, you've already lost. It's like one of the
Yeah.
rules. But there's that confidence because I know my shadow. I know my shadow will come up. I know my shadow is my friend, actually. That she will, this part of me will come up and do what is necessary to keep me safe, and then will go away again. That part of me that will help me boundary, that part of me that will say, actually, you know what, that shadow comes out when other people are being harmed as well. So I don't think it's inherently evil. I think it's uncomfortable, and that's why we don't like getting to know it.
It's part of being human, so it's not evil. It's just, I think our desire to perceive ourselves as being good leads to that. Well, I'm not capable of doing this. I accept the fact that I probably would be able to take somebody else's life in certain situations. So if somebody jumps at you with a knife, you probably do anything in your power to protect your life, even take theirs, even though you don't want to, that would probably happen. And a lot of people reject that idea, say, no, 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 I would never do that. Well, you probably would. um, what I wanted to say. Oh, the other very, very big misconception about shadow is that there's only evil things in there, which is not true. And what happens is when somebody, for example, if you grow up as a young person and you start singing because you like singing, and people just tell you to shut up all the time because you sing like shit, what happens is that, you have this story, well, it's not good for me to sing, I shouldn't be singing. It goes into your shadow and creates sort of emotional trauma or something like that. And it's there. And people think that, I've spoken to many people about this idea of shadow, and they say, I'm afraid of what I'm going to find there. I'm like, well, if you're afraid that you're going to find your evil, you're already aware of your evil, so probably you're going to find good things in there. Have a look, because there's not only bad things in your shadow, but things that you have rejected at some point of your life. So there's a lot of good that can be found through exploration of your shadow.
And we don't always know what we've rejected either.
Yeah, that's it.
So subtle. There's little things in there. And it could even be, so I had this wonderful story I did on my podcast with a lady who figured out at the age of 40 with her sister that her parents had always told her she was clever, and they
Mhm.
had always told her sister that she was pretty. And they had given love, they had given compliments, but she and her sister had taken it as, she had taken it as, I can never be pretty, and her sister had taken it as, I'm not clever, I shouldn't do schoolwork.
Yeah.
Right? And this had led to her having not great relationships and not really finding love until later in life, and to her sister never taking a qualification. And by the way, she's now studying in university in her 40s. People can say stuff to us, and we can store it in our shadow to protect ourselves
Yeah.
without us even realizing, and it could have been something said with love. So until we explore it, until we open it out and examine ourselves, we can't even know what we've been hiding because we thought it was bad. And
Mm.
that judgment, right, all with light and dark. And I kind of go back to, like, if you look at the night sky, one of the most beautiful night skies is where it's clear and you can see the moon and you can see the stars. And that's in your shadow. It's all those stars, it's that moonlight. But you've got to be willing to look first.
Nice. I like the analogy. Well, connecting to that, it's absolutely true because I remember from my earliest school days, I was always told that I'm talented, but I'm lazy. And I started believing that I'm talented and I'm lazy. And I was the most average student ever. And only when I left home and I moved to UK at the age of 22 and I started getting interested in certain things like reading books from psychology, I'm like, wow, I can read a whole book. I never read a book because seriously, because at school somebody tried to make me read a book about, some bullshit that I was not interested in, and book that has 600 pages. Now I can read 600 pages without a problem if I'm interested in it. So exactly what you say. I believed people for many, many years that I'm talented, that I have potential, but I'm just lazy. And then I realized I'm not lazy. You just wanted me to do shit I was not interested in, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I would basically on the shadow in a nutshell is a part of us. I think it's a very valuable part of us. And I think
Yeah.
it goes back to that lesson of you need to know yourself first and you need to know how to work with yourself because if you're always fighting it, you're never going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about integrating the whole person. And I have to say, I've been through. I have a friend in Brighton who's heavily involved in shadow work, and she sort of became a bit of a spiritual guide as well. I'm gonna hopefully have her on my podcast. So I went through spiritual ceremony once when that's shadow work involved, and I was exactly expecting what I said. A lot of people react. I was expecting that during ceremony I'll be somewhere else fighting with the devil in hell, and because I'm such a bad person, and I thought about this once and this, but what I actually found was the opposite. I've never felt so much acceptance and love. I know it sounds like lovey-dovey sort of fluffy bullshit, but love in a way of just being okay with yourself and having this moment where everything is just fine and you accept yourself fully. It was so amazing, and I realized that love is not only about giving it to others but allowing yourself to accept it as well. That was a big takeaway for me. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I saw you after you come back from that, and your energy had just shifted.
My friend said
It
that,
completely flipped.
yeah, thank you for that. My friend said that they see something different in my eyes. That it's my friend said literally, it's like you reach another level of yourself, and
Mm,
you just have to keep this connection. Again, it's like looking after your mental health. About this connection, you just have to keep looking after it. So it's not just one sort of, you do something once and that's it.
I know. It's like that's like going. But I love like using physical analogies for mental
Yeah,
stuff. You get it? Like it's like going to the gym once and sweating
yeah,
abs, right? It's like, or even like I used to have abs. I now have cuddle because lockdown and exercise. Um, but like they don't stay. It's the same thing with being in a good mental place.
mm,
You could be amazing at it one day, and then you let stuff slip, and you're not somewhere that you want to be only a little bit later, and then we've got to go back into those habits and back into knowing ourselves, back into communicating better.
yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about your sort of things that you're deeply in love, the leadership.
Mm.
Looking into current situation, how companies and organizations look at leadership, and I think there's still a lot of this old sort of dynamic that the manager or whoever is higher is your boss, and you have to listen. That's the dictator. What are we doing wrong, and what do we need to do to change that?
Yeah, again, it's the subtle things. So I'm working on something at the moment, and it's not new, right? It's 2,000 years old. You can go back further. You can go into the Bible. You can go into pretty much any text tenant that you want to go into, and you'll find leadership, and it will say these types of things. So in Jitsu, there's something called the Bushido. It's supposedly the warrior code of the samurai. There's like controversy over like whether it really was or wasn't, but I grew up with it and I believe in it. So
Yeah.
there are seven virtues that I went by. Some people say five, some people say eight. I went by seven. And they include things like kindness, courage, and they don't mean courage like facing somebody with a sword. It means doing the right thing,
Mhm.
having bravery to have integrity, humility, loyalty, and gratitude. Like all of these things that are in positive psychology are seen as soft skills, are the tenets by which warriors lived and died. Are the tenets by which they would, if they had been dishonored, they would commit seppuku. So they would, harikari, they'd put the knife in their stomach and cut it off, and then your mate would chop your head off if you had one, because it meant you died quicker. I'm not advocating doing that, but if these guys who are one of the most feared warrior class around, and you can find stuff in Roman tenets as well, but one of the most feared warrior class, and their code was courage, kindness, gratitude, loyalty, looking after those who have less ability to defend themselves than you do. All of these are coming in. Why on earth are they not the tenets of leadership? And I'm seeing it coming in. Servant leadership, authentic leadership coming in. But I think we still have, like you were saying, some organizations where it's seen as dog eat dog.
Yeah.
So, well, okay, if it's dog eat dog, you need these because this is how you win.
Mhm.
If you're in a finite game, like Simon Sinek has finite and infinite. If you're in a finite game of I just need to win today, I need to win tomorrow, then fine, you need these tenets. If you're in an infinite game, you need these tenets because infinitely this will get you further, this will get you remembered. And so I think it's looking at those soft skills and making them every day. And I think it's that really big one of honesty, because I see a lot of people who are trying to look after their staff. They're trying to be good. My boss, when I went through what I went through, was not a bad human being. They were not intentionally trying to harm me. In fact, he was trying to do good by me, but he didn't have enough of his own self-awareness to see how his stories and his lenses were affecting us,
Mhm.
and nobody could be honest with him. So how could he know? And it was good intentions that led to the issues we had. It was not bad intentions. So I think this goes back to, in leadership, we need to learn to understand ourselves first and foremost before we can then understand others. And we need to be able to be honest and have those check-ins. Because it might be, I think I'm helping you, and actually I haven't. And we need it where you can tell me that, and I can ask you, did this actually help you or not? And I get an
Yeah.
honest answer. And until we've put those soft skills into ourselves, into our leaders, and into our culture, I don't think it's going to fully happen. And I think good intentions will lead to unhappy people.
And I agree with you. I believe that it's leading by example. It's about uh, showing the values that everybody else should live, and not being a leader is not about telling people what to do. And I've seen situations, even previously in my job career, was that you get an assy email from somebody who you think is your colleague, and then he comes in a few minutes later and you have a normal conversation, and you're like, what the fuck is this all about? You sending an assy email, then you come here and we're chatting like nothing happens. And they just say, well, I'm just playing the game. That's how the corporation works. And fuck you.
Well, they might
It-
not even realize, right? Some people like don't realize that email tone is coming off in a certain way.
Yeah, but I'm clearly talking about the situation when somebody is aware and using that to say, I'm just playing a game. Well, I'm not here to play the game. You can't be, for me, you can't be different person when you send an email and then talk to me in a different way in my face, because you completely haven't got my trust.
That word, trust,
Trust, exactly.
so important, and it's so easy to lose. So
Yeah.
easy to lose. It takes a small thing to get rid of months of work. And I would add in, I taught martial arts, and I was taught by other people, and I was far from the best instructor. But one of the things it really, really rammed home for me is you can mess up. Like there's several instances I still remember and I hold very deeply where I did not do right by my students.
Mhm.
and I didn't listen to them. And I was actually trying to encourage them. I was trying to give them what they needed, and I messed up because I gave them what I thought they needed. I didn't listen to what they actually needed, what they were telling me they needed. And so I think it's okay to, you have to acknowledge that it's okay to mess up.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. You are human. Doesn't matter whether you are CEO of Amazon or of like a small company of 2 people. Doesn't even matter if you're just CEO of yourself. And I do think, like, you are your own C-suite, right? You are your own culture, your own leader. So it's got to start here. You're gonna make mistakes because you're human. You're not perfect. You're not at the top of your game all of the time. It's how you respond to those. So don't expect to be right. Don't expect to have all the answers. Don't expect to never have a moment where you screwed it up, because you will. That is inevitable. It's how you respond to that afterwards. And even if you don't respond how you wanted, like there was some where I realized way too late and I can't even go back and contact that student, but I can make sure the next student it doesn't happen with.
It's about learning from the experience, exactly.
Yeah.
And I like what you say. Nobody's perfect. It's in human nature to be, we are sort of we all have our flaws, but it's about being comfortable with that. It's part of being human. And if you try to pretend like you're perfect, you just look like an idiot, and you're gonna make even more mistakes because you're just gonna miss the learning along the way.
Own it. Like, own your mistake. Because the other thing is, one, it builds trust. That person actually gets respect from you. And two, when they make mistakes, they're gonna admit it.
Yeah.
So you can fix it. When they make mistakes, they're gonna feel comfortable doing it and they're gonna learn from it. They're not gonna try and hide it. You're not gonna discover it way too late. So just for so many reasons, you've got to accept that those flaws, that imperfections, and learn from them.
Yeah, I agree. So, Nat, before we wrap up, my question is, let's plug something. Let's plug something. Tell me what you're up to these days, what you have going on, how people can find you if somebody wants to fix the leadership in the company. This is your minute.
My minute. Well, I've got a website, so natalielockyercoaching.co.uk.
We're going to put it in the description as well. I'm gonna add
Yeah.
the link.
I work one-on-one. It's a very unique experience. I don't like doing big group sessions. I believe that it's finding the right answers for you. Somebody the other day told me I was the most unique coaching experience they had, and not at all what they expected from leadership. It's not. I'm not going to tell you how to do a job. I'm not going to tell you how to be a leader. I
Hmm.
am going to help you understand yourself and others better through asking powerful questions. And also, when COVID is over and done with, I'm fully qualified fire walk, glass walk instructor, board breaking, rebar bending, empowerment sessions. And yeah, I qualified in that last year, and I fully intend to bring that into some leadership retreats and things. So if you're intrigued about that, come find out. It embraces the whole idea that we need challenge in our life to be able to learn and grow.
So, in short, you're qualified pain distributor. You could say,
Yeah, and the medical side of me can help you get rid of that pain.
yeah. But it's absolutely, I'm looking forward. I'm so excited. The moment when you showed me, not only shared that you're doing the fireworks and the glasswork, but also when you shared with me actually how much preparation goes into it, I have even more appreciation to the process, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to actually try fireworking and glassworking. So I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait.
It sounds silly with those things being as soon as it's safe to do.
Yeah.
As soon as it's covidly safe to do, we'll do them with you.
As soon as it's safe to do, I'm gonna make you walk on glass and and
Broken
and
glass and
and
fire, yeah.
fire.
And then I'm going to put an arrow on your throat and we're going to break that too. Don't worry.
Wow, awesome.
But it's only the COVID part that's not safe, so it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. The rest can only hurt your feet, so you're good.
Yeah, just need a
You
little
you
bit.
can live without feet. Awesome, Nat. Thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed our conversation greatly. You're awesome. I'm sure there will be times when we're still gonna do something together. I'm
Yeah, I know
100%
you
sure.
can't run away.
Yeah, I'm sure our paths will cross again. So thank you very much for being here with me, and thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Have a good evening, Sam.
You too. Thank you very much.
Bye.